Worship associate today. I serve this congregation, I would say on the worship committee, but at the moment it's as the worship committee. Thank you for being here with us, whether you're joining us in the pews or online. So, start with some announcements. Our lunch bunch today will be at Torchy's Tacos, which is on San Felipe. This is just an informal gathering after the service where some people go and have lunch together and talk. Everyone is welcome. Visitors especially are welcome to join us. Between the service and lunch bunch, we share coffee and conversation in our gathering place just outside the narthex there. Each Sunday, we have members of our lay pastoral ministry team here in the sanctuary during and after the service to listen to any immediate care needs you might need, or to help you if there was anything in the service that you had a problem with or a conflict with or would just like to discuss. They wear yellow name tags, so you'll be able to identify them. The Inquirer session today includes a campus tour. Everyone is welcome. Meet in room 204 at 12:30. Next week's topic is worship in the liturgical year, which will be led by Reverend Ed. Sign up for a light lunch at the yellow poster in the gathering place. Are you new to UU? Are you interested in getting to know Emerson? We're interested in getting to know you. Join us today at 12:15 in the library, which is room 203, to explore Emerson and Unitarian Universalism. Refreshments will be served. Any visitors here today, we have quite a few of you, you are invited to fill out our yellow visitor card, which is in the pew in front of you. If you do, you'll receive more information about Emerson and our activities. We'll put you on our twice-a-week email list. We don't bombard you with trash. If you fill a card out, you can place it in one of the offering baskets or hand it to anybody who's wearing a name tag. They'll take care of you. And now, please enjoy our prelude as we begin our formal service. Our pulpit guest today is Brother James Dennis, who comes to us from San Antonio. He has one of his books of poetry out in the gathering place for you to purchase if you wish. There will also be some in our bookstore. And his colleague, Lana Rigsby, there it is, Lana Rigsby, who will be doing readings today, was the designer of this same book. So please welcome both of them. As we gather in community, we look within ourselves and to each other for strength, restoration, and inspiration, so that as we journey together, we catch the spark of the eternal spirit, and from that spark, we light our chalice flame. Lighting the chalice flame symbolizes to all that the spirit of our congregation is strong, and that our will to transform ourselves and the world is also strong. We light the flame with gratitude. We light the flame in memory of all who have gone before, in honor of all who are here now, and with joy for all who are yet to come. As Stephen Lipp lights our chalice flame here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you joining us from home to light a candle or chalice of your own. We're celebrating Poetry Month here at Emerson, and we hear the words from a former member of our poetry group, David Bates, and his poem, Chalice. Please join me in reading these words together as they appear on the screen. Come celebrate the dancing flame, there but not there, ancient and eternal, fleeting and gone, now flickering again, teasing, enticing, always changing, always the same. Mysterious energy, summoning wisdom, tickle our minds, comfort our anxious souls, delight the small children, and shed your light on the darkness. As you sing your silent refrain, our little flame, the atoms dancing, connect us with all that is, all that ever has been, all that ever will be. As we work to create beloved community, we welcome all who would join us in building a better world with more love, more justice, and more peace. We welcome all who would join us in growing in mind, heart, and spirit. We welcome all who would join us in tearing down systems of oppression of all kinds. We welcome all who would join their purpose to ours in a loving spirit of right relationship. Please join me in our welcoming. The words are on the screen. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here. And now we have our presentation of this week in Unitarian Universalist history with Richard Cummins.
Thank you, Mary. For the week of April 21st through the 27th, from Frank Schulman's wonderful book, This Day in UU History, I've selected a couple of items. On the 26th of April, in 1866, historian Earl Morse Wilbur was born in Jericho, Vermont. He served as a Unitarian minister in Portland, Oregon, and Meadville, Pennsylvania. Wilbur was organizer, dean, professor of practical theology, and later president of Pacific Unitarian School for the Ministry. He wrote Our Unitarian Heritage in 1925 and a 2-volume History of Unitarianism from 45 to 52. Harvard University Press published his translations of Servetus's works in 1932. He died on January 8, 1956. Now, some of you in the RE class have heard this, but there's another Morse. In 1791, on the 27th, Samuel Finley Breese Morse was born in Charlestown, Massachusetts, the son of Orthodox minister Jedediah Morse. His first career was as an artist, creating some well-known paintings, such as the portraits of the Marquis de Lafayette. He taught painting and sculpture at NYU, a position of honor, but no salary. Morse then went to Europe to pursue his career in portraiture, after which he became a leading opponent of Roman Catholicism as part of the nativist movement. He enjoyed practical innovation As a hobby, he invented the finger key transmitter for the telegraph and created the Morse code, 1836. The first transmission was the message, "What hath God wrought?" on May 24th, 1844. Later, he became an advocate of higher education for women, founding Vassar College in 1865 and Douglas College in 1871. He died on April 2nd, 1872. And a very quick one, in 1882, Ralph Waldo Emerson, our namesake, died at the age of 79 in Concord, Massachusetts. And now I would invite our guest, Lana Rigsby, to deliver our first reading, which is a poem from the Songs of 7 Days by James R. Dennis. Lana?
Good morning. Before I read the poem, there's something that I need to tell you about. It's about a rock that I brought here with me this morning. Now, this thing wasn't always a rock. It started life as a snail, a cousin of the dinoflagellates that are on the cover of James's book. And it lived at the bottom of a vast ocean that is now San Antonio, Texas, where James lives. This was 260 million years ago. Now, when this thing was a snail, it spake as a snail, and it thought and it understood as a snail. But time and change transformed it over many millennia into a stone. And now this stone has a whole different use. Paleontologists use it to tell us about the vast sweep of history that happened from a time before there were even dinosaurs on the earth until today. This is the kind of thing that James Dennis was thinking about when he wrote this poem, which is entitled The Uses of Stone. Homer first told us the story of Sisyphus, who cheated death twice. In one of those events, Sisyphus chained Hades up so that no one could die. In punishment, Hades sentenced him to roll an immense stone up one of the steep hills of Tartarus in perpetuity. To make matters worse, Hades bewitched the rock so that it would always slip away before it reached the top. Some stones are like that. With a bit of braggadocio or deep faith, he was capable of both. Scripture reports that David rejected King Saul's armor. Instead, he chose 5 smooth stones from the river when he went out to battle with Goliath. And we all know how that turned out. Some will find this story astonishing because giants are reportedly very hard to kill. The Egyptians used more than 2.3 million blocks of stone to build the pyramids. Each of those blocks of stone weighs about 2.5 metric tons, roughly equivalent to about 25 refrigerators. The pyramids were built as temples to honor the gods and to entomb the pharaohs as they journeyed to the afterlife. In Giza, the pyramids have endured for about 5,000 years, which is good because the afterlife can last a long time. On Easter morning, we're told someone had rolled away the stone which sealed the tomb where they had laid Jesus on a bed made of stone. Matthew says that an angel rolled away the stone. One mustn't underestimate the strength of angels, especially on Easter morning. But let's return for a moment to the story of David. In 1504, Michelangelo completed his statue of David, hewn from an immense stone, a block of marble from Carrara. Michelangelo said he saw the angel inside the marble and chipped away all the bits of stone which were not David. To honor the dead, Jews will mark a grave with visitation stones. These stones may keep out demons and golems or retain a noble soul within the world. But mostly, the stones mark a lasting remembrance. And in South India, you can find burden stones, slabs of rock about the height of your shoulders, where travelers can lay down their heavy loads and take a bit of rest. Thank you.
And now I would like to invite Mim Frater to deliver a poem written by a longtime Emerson member, Dodie Meeks. The poem is entitled, Every Day, Every Day.
I first met Dodie Meeks in our poetry group, and for Dodie, her poems reflected one of the many moods of poetry. Poetry can have inspiration, it can be calming, it can provide comfort, or it can have humor. And her poems always seem to have humor. And this poem is from the book of Poetry for Children. Now, poems also can illuminate our own experiences. And when my granddaughter was very young, I ended up caring for her for parts of several years. And she hated to get up in the morning. We had daily battles over that. So the title, Every Day, for me, was perfect. Marissa, Marissa, you bad sleepyhead, I'm yanking your blankie right off of your head and icing your middle. I have a whole cup. Marissa, Marissa, you'd better wake up. I'll make your walls shiver. I'll pound on your door. I'll dump all your marbles all over the floor. For your father is fuming, your mother's in tears. It's time to quit faking. I'm on to you, dear. I'll pry up your eyelids. I know you're inside. You can't hide from Grandma. I'll say open wide and toothpaste your tonsils and make you spit foam. And I'll croak like a grackle and never go home.
And now, with our chalice lit and our hearts and minds centered, we invite you to join your voices with ours in celebration by singing a hymn. You may stand if you're comfortable doing so or stay seated, but please help us raise our voices and sing. Our opening hymn is in the gray hymnal number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.
Life and its creatures, great and small.
Emerson collects an offering each week like many other communities of faith, but our offering is not for our church, which is supported by the pledges of our members. We collect our Sunday offering to give to others, because we know that giving is both a transformative spiritual act and an important way to live our values. 75% of today's offering will go to our April Share the Plate recipient, Texas UU Justice Ministry. TXUUJM advocates for public policies that reflect UU values and principles. They are the UU State Action Network. Most Texas UU churches are members of TXUUJM. It organizes, facilitates, and supports activities such as rallies at the Texas Capitol, lobbying legislatures in person and electronically, UU the Vote, support for LGBTQ, transgender, and immigration rights. It also closely collaborates with like-minded partners on social justice. The remaining 25% of today's offering will go, as always, to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, which provides thousands of meals every day to Houston's homebound seniors. You can go to our webpage for online giving, put cash or check in our offering basket, or mail a check to the church. During the offering music, children who would like to attend an RE class may follow the teachers to the classrooms.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is James Dennis. I'm Brother James Dennis. I'm a Dominican brother, and I'm also a poet. And I will save most of what I need to tell you this morning until my remarks in the sermon. But as a Dominican brother, one makes a vow of poverty, which is entirely consistent with being a poet. One of the things that I profoundly love about poetry, and I'm a novelist, and a long time ago I used to be a lawyer. I'm recovering from that. But one of the things I love is that we tell stories. And there is something innate about telling stories as humans. That's what we do. We have always been storytellers. If you go look at the caves at Lascaux and see the drawings there, we were telling stories that far back. Even at night, when we sleep, we are still telling stories to ourselves. That's what our dreams are the stories we tell each other. And as a community, as a church community, we are telling ourselves the story of who we are and who we can be but are not yet. And that, I think, is where poetry invites us into a deeper conversation that most of us haven't had consistently in our lives. So I want us to think about our lives as storytellers and how poetry, and by the way, I grew up initially as a musician. And so song is, I teach with high school kids who tell me they hate poetry, and I hated poetry in high school. And the reason I hated it is it was bad poetry. But our music, the songs we sing, The songs we sing are poetry. It is rhythm, it is rhyme, it is cadence. That's all poetry ever was. It's how poetry began. So when I teach students poetry in high school or younger, I start with music because we've been making music for a very long time. Shortly after we were standing upright, we were beating sticks and stones together, saying, "Listen to how that sounds." Or we were imitating birds, saying, "Listen to that." And that's where our poetry comes from. And I think it comes from the deepest part of who we are. We'll talk here in just a little bit more. Thank you.
The poem I'm about to read is one of my personal favorites in this book of James's. It manages to be at once a meditation on music and song and on world events today, good, bad, worse, and on our place in the world today. It's titled Sanctuary. Entre nous, I think we could use a bit of a rest. This world can leave us, all of us, in tatters, and it's easy to forget the things that really matter. We've been working too hard in the service of a Pharaoh who invariably demands more bricks. And we have been running from the dragons of demagoguery and the profiteers who peddle fear and the screech of our politics and the madness of our lust for violence. And so we have come to the end of our rope, untethered from our source, fragments of the people we once were. But there is rest for the weary, a balm in Gilead. We can take our rest in song and music, whether a gospel choir or a nocturne by Debussy. The barbarians at the gates seem redoubtable, but there is medicine in music, and it is bountiful. Our art will teach us how to be human again. We can learn from Van Gogh and Kandinsky and Gauguin. As for me, I have sought shelter within the cathedral of words. We're told that the Almighty spoke the world into existence. Let us then speak of a better world in a more compassionate tongue. It is time.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning again. It's a great pleasure to be with you here this morning at Emerson as we approach the end of Poetry Month. And I'm grateful to Reverend Ed for inviting me to join you this morning as we discuss poetry as a spiritual practice. My Dominican brother, Thomas Aquinas, said, "The things that we love tell us who we are." I think that's true. And among the things I love are poetry and the way the Spirit moves in our lives. Well, I also love biscuits. But Reverend Ed told me not to mention that, and so I will limit my remarks to poetry and spirituality. But I hope you might conclude when we're done this morning that maybe poetry and our spiritual lives are not such different things. The relationship between our poetry and our spirituality almost certainly predates our written word. And our earliest poetry was probably spoken or sung somewhere around 2,000 years ago, before the Common Era. Some Sumerian poet wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh. They were trying to understand death and our longing for immortality, the power of friendship to change our lives, the need for balance and order, love, and the role that the gods played in our lives. Every one of those issues in that long poem has a spiritual consequence. Somewhere in the 8th century BCE, the ancient Greek poet we call Homer worked out his spiritual notions of our humanity in the Iliad and the Odyssey. He wondered about honor and glory, the horror of war, fate and free will, the whimsical nature of the gods, love and friendship, senseless violence, and an impossibly long journey back home. Each one of those ideas is tied to our deepest sense of what it means to be profoundly human, and therefore is tethered to our spirituality. In my own religious tradition, we view poetry as so important that it's part of our liturgy every week. And the poetry of the people of Israel, which we usually call the Psalms, ask us to look into feelings that we've been abandoned by God, or ask us to examine the unfathomable mystery of nature, to inquire about the difference between the soul and the self, and calls upon the divine to witness our suffering. In a great deal of the Hindu Vedas, the sacred text examines the human knowledge and understanding, the gods and the self, ethical and moral guidelines. Our Native American brothers and sisters kept their family stories in genealogies told in song and poetry. As with many of the creation stories worldwide, they ask us to look into our humanity and spirituality, and there were no more deeply important questions than, where did all this come from? Where did I come from? As you can see, we've been trying to explore our spirituality in the physical world through poetry for a very long time. In both the spiritual and poetic dimensions, we treat language as something sacred, something holy. When a poet is honest about their work, we give thanks to an unknown source which we cannot reconcile as coming from ourselves. The Greeks had a name for that source. They called it the Muse. And they recognized it as a gift from the sacred. One could just as easily call it spirit. As the poet Wallace Stevens said in The Idea of Order at Key West, whose spirit is this? We said, because we knew it was the Spirit we sought and knew that we should ask this as often as she sang. Then, as we beheld her striding there alone, knew that there never was a word for her except the one she sang, and singing she made. We treat language as sacred and holy in the spiritual world. In my tradition, God speaks the world into existence. But in his fabulous work, The Silmarillion, Tolkien offered a myth in which God sings the world into existence. Don't tell anybody, but I think I like that story better. We should talk about the distinction between prose and poetry as different ways of understanding the world. In prose, we try to write clearly so that the reader can understand. We want to convey information in a very direct way. So in prose, if I were trying to explain grief, I might talk about the stages of grief or the psychological consequences, or how one might expect grief to affect our mood and our behavior. Poetry is different. Poetry is indirect, and while it still seeks understanding, it looks into something more deeply personal. A friend recently asked me, and I'll omit the profanity, why poetry has to be so confusing, so ambiguous. I answered him, quoting Edward Albee, sometimes you have to go a long way out of your way to come back a short distance correctly. And so the poet might write about grief, as W.H. Auden did, saying he was my north, my south, my east, my west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought love would last forever. I was wrong. A psychologist might describe strategies for coping with trauma or stress, and they would be straightforward and cogent and perhaps even helpful. But the poet would explain, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. She is speaking words of wisdom. Let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be. Among the most powerful tools of the poet are metaphor and simile, the use of one thing to represent another. To borrow from the poet Emily Dickinson, our poetic language seeks to tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Poetry realizes that some moments, perhaps our most profound moments, require a bit of indirection to get to their humanity. So by way of example, many of us know the story of Ulysses and the Odyssey, the story of his long return home from the Battle of Troy. Now the prose version, the Cliff Note version, is that it took him 10 years to get home, and so long that his wife thought he had abandoned her, and she didn't even recognize him when he got home. But the poet says, not any of those moments. No, not those, but the moment he stands face to face with only her and takes off the last of his armor, and she comes to him and touches his shoulder. History is what happens when we step outside of the myths and see the real mess standing before us. Love is what happens after that. Poetry and our spiritual life have another common point of intersection, a vital and compelling need to look for the truth. Now, religion and truth have sometimes had a toxic relationship. I grew up in West Texas and regularly saw biblical bumper stickers proclaiming biblical truth. God said it, I believe it, and that ends it. That's not what I mean. When I talk about the search for spiritual truth, I mean something closer to my favorite theologian, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who said that the spiritual life is not clinging to a shrine, but an endless pilgrimage of the heart. Like the life of the Spirit, poetry is also an endless journey of the heart. Or as Archbishop Romero, the martyr of El Salvador, noted, there are many things that can be seen only through eyes that have cried. In other words, truth has very little to do with smug self-certainty. The search for spiritual truth and poetic truth always, and I mean always, requires us to look through the lens of compassion. Of poetry's commitment to the truth, I can best turn to a song by Bruce Cockburn called Maybe the Poet, in which he wrote about the poet that he may be the voice of spirit, in which case you'd better hear it. Maybe he's a woman who can touch you where you're human. Male, female, slave or free, peaceful or disorderly, maybe you and he will not agree, but you need him to show you new ways to see. The final point of intersection I want to raise between poetry and the spiritual life is the need for us to step out of a mundane way of walking through the world, what Martin Heidegger called unreflective everydayness. Too often, we coast through life casually without noticing the beauty and mystery and wonder all around us. We have traded joy and celebration away in exchange for amusements and entertainment. Both poetry and spirituality call us into something deeper, something far more human. Rabbi Heschel reminds us our goal should be to live in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. Mary Oliver illustrates this need for attentiveness and its relationship to our souls in the poem Praying. She writes, it doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot, or a few small stones. Just pay attention, and then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but a doorway into thanks, into silence which speaks, so that another voice may speak. I hope we listen for that other voice to speak. Poetry and spirituality call to us to listen, to pay attention, to be amazed at the mystery we have been invited into. I hope we can be daring and brave and reach for something wonderful, because we are standing on the edge of mystery, on the horizon of the infinite. This world needs a broader vision, and it doesn't take much, just a small sense of the holiness of language, a commitment to the truth, a bit of compassion, a little bit of awe, to touch the deep magic and a sense of wonder. That stuff is infectious. Reverence is contagious. let it begin with us. Thank you.
And now, please join us in singing our closing hymn, which is in the gray hymnal, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Each time we come together, we move. We move with the words we hear. We move with the music we hear. We move with the light of the chalice, which, like us, flickers and flutters from side to side, moving constantly, yet tethered to its source. We extinguish the chalice now not as a symbolic ritual, but as a practical ritual. We do this because the flickering, fluttering light of our congregation is carried within each of us here present, those not present today, those who left this community long ago never to return, and those who have yet to arrive. I see Stephen has already come to extinguish the chalice for us. We are so grateful for your presence this morning. For those of you who have joined us on YouTube, after the postlude, we'll be ending our live streaming service. We love having you and look forward to seeing you again here, either online or with us here on Bering Drive. May we, in the course of the week to come, be able to feel the liberating freedom of this religious path we share. May our gods welcome us. May they challenge us to live up to our own expectations of ourselves, wherever and whatever they are. And may the world around us light up so that we might see our way back to clarity and wholeness.